Welcome to the Upland Nation podcast. I'm Scott Linden, your host on our weekly and sometimes more than weekly adventure into the prairies, the fields, the forests, and sometimes even into the water. This week we'll be climbing the hills with the founder of Chukar Culture. Bob McMichael joins me to talk all about, well, everything devil birds, and who knows where we'll go after that. But it will be a pleasure to finally speak with him after so many years of trying and finally connecting. Yeah, we'll have tips on everything from where to find those birds to hunting strategies, you name it. It'll be coming up right here on the Upland Nation podcast. As well, shooting is my nemesis. How about yours? I asked on social media, and you'll be interested in the responses we got, not just about shooting, but about all the things that plague us in the field. And finally, in our Fix It segment, feeding for performance this season, a tip that might just help your dog have a little bit more energy that second and third day in the field. It's all coming up on the Upland Nation podcast, brought to you in part by Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School, TrulockChokes tubes, Purina Pro Plan Sport dog food, Sage and Breaker gun care products, Cable Gangs tie-out systems, Pointer shotguns, Heartland Lodge, and HiViz sights. Well, I pulled an old photo out from a TV shoot we did, which just caught everything in one fell swoop. Bird rising, dog running. Yeah, not one of mine, but it could have been. A guide in the foreground, me in the midground, taking aim at what I think is a pheasant. It's a little bit hard to tell, but that photo and that question, shooting is my nemesis. I think, hope, pray I'm better than last season. How about you? Got some great responses, and I'll just share some of those with you. Grant Gobler says, his shooting is frustrating, to put it mildly. If you've ever seen a baseball player snap his bat over his knee, ow, or a golfer throwing his club, I'm in that category at times. I've been there, done that. Better now, Grant, but I know the feeling. Colin Farrell says, there are times when you could hold my Ithaca on my foot. I could pull the trigger and I'd still miss. The shooting gremlins are sneaky little SOBs. Then I get the one, you've got to be kidding me look from his dog Ellie. And there it is. I'll try and share that as well. Oh my, Brian Woodford. I'm the opposite. Shooting doesn't seem to be an issue, especially with my old SBE. It must fit me just right. I can't explain to anyone how to shoot because I mount the gun and fire. I really don't know how to explain it. Hey, as long as it works for you, Brian, I'm all for it. Dan C. said, recently had a new side-by-side 28 gauge fitted and had an old Beretta over and under 20 gauge fitted as a southpaw. So hopefully I will be shooting better. Boy, I can relate to that. Back at the day, I thought I'd do the same thing. I finally decided instead of wearing a patch on my glasses, I'd just learn to shoot left-handed. Even went to the trouble of having a stock bent the other way. Well, the stock bending worked. The left-handed shooting didn't work. And the only beneficiary is my buddy Dave, who is a lefty and got that really nice Spanish shotgun as a result. James McConnell says, custom-built gun to fit me arrived 2 weeks ago. I've never shot sporting clays so well. Good so far. Joe Rundell, I patterned my gun. I'm hoping it helps. Joe, it cannot hurt. Maybe you'll change your choke tubes or your loads or something like that, but patterning is the first step. Tyler Lee says, I can shoot. Getting time to go is my nemesis. Yeah, we can all relate to that one. And thank you all for contributing to that. I didn't get to everybody, but I got to as many as I could. And maybe you, like me, was reminded of some of the things that are important when it comes to our own shooting. Thanks again to everybody who kicked in on that one. That portion of the program brought to you by TrulockChokes. Speaking of shooting better, that's one way to do it. Invest in some high quality choke tubes. And remember, Scott Trulock has offered just Upland Nation visitors a chance to get some flush mounted choke tubes for their side-by-sides. If he doesn't make them and offer them yet, he'll custom make them for you at the same price as their regular choke tubes. So if you're one of those that likes the aesthetics of flush mounts in their side-by-side, go to TrulockChokes.com. Get the phone number, call Scott directly, call Scott Trulock, tell him what you're looking for, what shotgun you need it for, and he'll take care of you. And you will shoot better. And once you're shooting better, maybe you need to clean your gun a little bit more often. Well, this time of the year, you probably ought to clean it after every day in the field. One of my favorite products from sageandbreaker.com is their CLP. It's a spray-on liquid, of course, that will clean, lubricate, and protect. Get it? CLP. Non-toxic and made in America. And boy, oh boy, does it work. Not only will it get the grease and the grime off, take all those fingerprints and all the oily stuff from inside the workings of your gun, it also helps repel dust and dirt. Learn about all the gun care products at sageandbreaker.com and sign up for the email list. Just got a great email on shopping for a used shotgun. Some great tips in there, and you only get those if you're on the mailing list. sageandbreaker.com. Well, he's got a new book coming out called Chukar Culture. I've got the t-shirt already. Because it's so much more than just climbing the hills and shooting at stuff. It's the dogs, it's a whole bunch of other things, and we'll talk all about that. He's got a website of the same name. You know him for his YouTube channel. This is the thinking man's Chukar hunter, Bob McMichael. Welcome to the Upland Nation podcast.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here, Scott.
You know, this has been years in the making.
Yeah. That's true.
You were a moving target. I was less of a moving target, but I'm glad we finally got connected. And then it's interesting, once I got to know you a little bit, we got a lot more in common than we thought. You know, you were a musician, I was a musician. You were a teacher, I was a teacher. We came to chukar hunting late in life. I mean, someday we'll have to discuss all that over a frosty glass of malty goodness.
I totally agree. Yeah, it's amazing how you find the deeper you go in getting to know someone, the more you have in common, and it seems to be a lesson that we need to be reminded of more.
Yeah, I've noticed recently in the last decade or so that if you find a connection with somebody, all of a sudden a lot of barriers just fall by the wayside. And it's not just among hunters, but that is one of the more obvious ones for you and me. But
sure.
You've gone way beyond me in the world of say education and that sort of thing. And we'll get to that as well. But first, just give me a little bit of your backstory.
Well, I grew up kind of a beach rat in Southern California, and I always kind of liked the mountains. My dad, when I was about 9 or 10, he built a cabin in eastern Idaho near the Montana border, and so I got a taste of that environment pretty young. But it wasn't until I actually moved to Idaho myself in about 2000 that I started doing anything related to hunting, and I didn't get my first dog until just after I moved there. I'd been involved in academia. I up until I moved to Idaho, I got a PhD back in Rhode Island at Brown, and I didn't really fit in very well on the East Coast. I was reminded all the time how much of a West Coast sensibility I had. So I tried academia, and I just got kind of tired of that. And then in Idaho, I moved to Boise, and I didn't know anyone there. I figured it's a relatively big city. I can get a job. And so I started working as a tech writer, and then I ended up with a small mom and pop aviation equipment company for a while. And after about 10 years, I got tired of that, and I wanted to get back into education, and I was too far out of academia. So I got a teaching credential and started teaching middle school and high school, and I had no clue what I was doing or what I was getting myself into. It was
just like the rest of us.
Yeah. It was by far the most challenging thing I've ever done. But after I kind of found my feet, nothing I've done has come even close to the gratification of doing that job. So I'm retired from it now. I worked in education for 10 years, and now I'm retired. So I miss the kids a lot. I don't miss what's happening to public education, which had started when I was still teaching, but it's much worse now. But we don't need to get into that.
No, or we wouldn't have time to talk about anything else. But that's one more thing we have in common.
Yeah.
And you do miss it, and so do I. But the other thing is, and maybe you've thought about it the same way I have. In a lot of ways, your website, your book, your YouTube channel are all teaching people something, and ideally something they really want to learn. And that's probably, a small consolation.
Well, I've honestly, Scott, I have never thought of it that way. I look at it almost in the opposite way. I think I put that in the acknowledgments of the book. That I have learned way more from the people who read and comment on my blog. Yeah. And I'm sure they've learned from me. So it's kind of like I put myself out there, but I get more back. Yeah. From people who listen and like I am with a lot of websites and podcasts. I lurk there, but I don't comment. So I know there are people who don't comment, but they spring up every once in a while and blow me away with something they notice that I had no intention of conveying in something I wrote. So that's what makes the blogosphere exciting to me is being part of that kind of conversation.
Well, and I know exactly what you mean. The reason I do what I do is because I learn something every day. And I'm curious, and you learn it from in the introduction to today's podcast. I learned a lot about how people feel about their own shooting abilities, for example, and you'll hear that. Oh yeah. So there's always something out there, and if nothing else, it gives you food for thought. But we could talk all day about all those things and more, and we will, but not here. Sure. Let's talk about the highest priority about this time of year, which is chukar hunting. And you're in the thick of it in terms of geography over there. What else about the game, if you want to call it that, trips your trigger? What do you love most about chukar hunting?
Oh boy, that's a big question. The first thing that comes to mind is just being able to go on public land without asking anyone if I could do it. And just hiking where I've feel I need to go to find birds and to get my dogs activated and, and then it's the exercise, but also the scenic beauty of it all. It's just, it's not, I'm not in it for, if I was in it for caloric replenishment, I would be dead like a long time ago. So, if I get a couple birds, an outing, that's awesome. I I always try to limit, but I don't think I've ever limited when Idaho's limit's been 8. I've limited a couple times when they lowered it to 6 a few years ago. But I just love getting out and being able to try anything, looking at onyx and finding places we've never been that look like it might be good, and just trying out new spots, and then going to old favorites and seeing how how it's changed. Like, is there more Medusa head or less, or how's the sage looking? Is the bitter brush dying out, or has it been burned up? I care about the landscape and the habitat for the birds, and I always have to remind myself that these are an introduced species, these chukar, and if they weren't here, a lot of people would miss them, but they're not supposed to be here, so that kind of always is in the back of my mind, or I forget about it, and then I deliberately remind myself of it, because there are other native species of birds that probably need more, especially like the sharp-tailed grouse around here, and we can talk about that on or offline, but it's just an amazing, to get back to your initial question, it's just incredible to me that there are still places that you can go and see and maybe shoot legally, 4 or 5 species in a single outing. It's just incredible.
It's funny you bring that up, because in the last few weeks, we've all got something top of mind, and it has to do with feathers and dogs and all of that. But this idea of turning a chukar hunt into a blue grouse hunt, for example, or something like that, it seems to be top of mind for more people in the last few weeks that I've talked to. Do you actually get the chance to do that periodically?
Quite often, actually, and I grouse season in Idaho starts on August 30th, tomorrow. Yeah. And usually that time of year, it's so hot, I rarely have gotten excited about going out on opening day, and I have had some negative experiences on opening day, just with traffic, other hunters and people road hunting, and so grouse hunting per se is not something that I've done a lot of, but I have shot a lot of dusky or blue grouse while chukar hunting. Either in the open, but always fairly near a stand of fur, or it's usually fur. It's usually not ponderosas anyway. But I always love, I prefer eating the grouse to chukar, just because they're bigger and the meat it's sweeter, and I don't know, there's a little more fat in it seems like. But yeah, having the opportunity to find these big grouse that the dogs don't often point. Sometimes they'll point them, but they don't usually tend to hold them. I have Brittany, so they're pointing dogs. Maybe half the time they'll point in the open, and I don't, when they're pointing and it's grass, I don't know what kind of, I can't see the bird, so I don't know if it's a covey of chukar that's going to bust, or if it's a single blue grouse. And, when a blue grouse goes up and you're expecting chukar, that there's a cognitive, reorientation that your brain has to go through in order to get ready to fire. Because sometimes we rarely, though, but enough times, sage grouse have gone up.
Huh.
And that scares the crap out of you, because it's like the size of a turkey almost, and you're not expecting that for sure, and you can't legally shoot them. So I always try to, make sure that I know what I'm shooting at. So, this one time springs to mind where both dogs were pointing what I was sure was a covey of chukar, because I'd seen them land in this area, and a sage grouse comes up, and so that's also part of it. It's just the excitement of like not knowing what's going to bust or where they're going to bust from. I can't get enough of it.
Well, the book talks more and more about this and gives us a better feel for it. And you've addressed some of what I think will be your answer to the question. But, I remember when Sergeant Ben Warner gifted me my Chukar Culture T-shirt.
What a sweet man.
Don't get me started. But Ben was one of a kind. And I like to think I returned the favor. In fact, I just wrote a story about him. But I thought, no one's ever described it quite that way, but it's absolutely true. If you talk to enough people who actually do this for a lifestyle, how else would you describe Chukar culture?
Well, I talk about that in the introduction to the book, in the sense that it's to me, it's something that touches pretty much every aspect of daily life, not just during chukar season, but the rest of the other 8 months of the year. And that doesn't mean that I'm constantly thinking about chukar hunting or about dog pad conditioning or anything like that. It's just something that's always there with me as something I know I do during the season. But I guess the simplest way to answer it would be just to say that it's like a major part of what I think my identity is that I'm a chukar hunter. But what that means to me is that I'm always looking for different viewpoints on the land or the habitat, or looking for a new study or a new poem that relates to my experience in the field. I mean, memory is part of the subtitle of the book, and it's just something like chukar hunting, and people are like this with all hobbies that are important to them. They're always thinking about it in some way, and since I started doing this, it's just been something that's gotten more and more thickly involved with my existence. So, when I stopped doing it, it's, I try not to even think about that, but, I know it's not going to be something I'll do for the rest of my life. Probably. It's physically demanding. So just from a physical standpoint, being able to do it, into my 80s, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be able to do that. We hunted a lot with a guy who was about to turn 80, and then we still hunted it with him, but as he got to be 82, 83, and he was super fit. He just couldn't go uphill with us. And so it's not an old person's game. Age is relative, but the hills are not relative. They're a certain steepness, and that steepness doesn't change.
Well,
really,
but to a degree, and everything you said is spot on. And I would just only add to that, there's another dimension to this idea of culture, philosophy, whatever you want to call it, that is about becoming better at it. And for example, staying in shape, training the dogs more, finding new spots, learning how to shoot better. All those things are the most obvious ways that we manifest that culture, if you will.
Right.
As I described to you, that as a thinking man, going beyond all that to habitat and dynamics of habitat, all those are also part of it. But yes, we are limited at some point physically, but until then, it's keeping us younger, isn't it?
I think so. I mean, absolutely. It's something that it keeps your mind active if you're thinking about it in one way or another, and the number of possible ways of thinking about it to me is unlimited. Mm-hmm. Just if you're kind of used to trying to make connections between things, and a lot of people who read my blog or who read my blog and got fed up with me trying to do that, just like they wanted it to I got a lot of comments from people who didn't want us to change the name of the blog to Chukar Culture. Back when we did it, I can't even remember when we did that, but they wanted it to focus on how-to kind of stuff. And there's I understood that for sure. And if you're trying to get information about how to do something, nowadays you go to YouTube to try to find it, and there's a little bit of that on the blog, but more and more recently, the posts that I've been writing have had very little to do actually with chukar hunting per se, but I try to bring it into it here and there. Like I wrote a post about a woman. And the post was titled Erica, and it was a woman who I was friends with in the 90s, and I went to Turkey, and Turkey is like one of the geographic centers of chukar, where they come from, but this was way before I ever started. I don't think I'd ever even heard the word chukar, and I was in the middle of them, and being able to remember that trip when I get to Hell's Canyon, 10 or 15 years later, and seeing the similarity in the landscape is something that just kind of opens up all kinds of things, the memories of that trip and the danger, because we were traveling through the area that was being fought over between the Turks and the Kurds. Just the food and the smells and the language, and then all of a sudden here I am in Western Idaho, and it looks just like Turkey. Then there are some people who read the blog who are from Turkey, but they live in the U.S. now, and so I get talking to them about their homeland, and they're like thrilled that someone actually has been there. So I don't know.
It is kind of fun, and I've got a lot of followers in Pakistan, of all places. Same thing. They love seeing the pictures. They love learning about us doing what they do. It's amazing how many bird hunters there are in the Middle East. And that's kind of cool. We have something in common, like so many other people. and in our world, and that's really kind of part of that whole cultural thing as well, if you think about it.
Absolutely, yeah.
We haven't really talked much about the sport itself, if you want to call it that. That's Bob McMichael. I'm Scott Linden. This is the Upland Nation podcast. We will get deeper into actual chukar hunting and the book by the same name, Chukar Culture, coming up after this quick break. Bob, hold on just a moment. And in addition to that, we'll also have a feeding suggestion for your dog this season that might just give him a little bit more energy. It's worked for me. Maybe it'll work for you as well. It's all brought to you by Pro Plan Sport. Speaking of feeding, Pro Plan Sport dog food from Purina, designed for active, hard-working dogs. Hey, kind of like yours and mine. High protein formula. The first ingredient is real meat. 100% complete and balanced nutrition. And by balance, I think one of the keys, and the folks there at Purina will tell you the same thing, that 30% protein, 20% fat formulation seems to be the sweet spot. Yeah, I know, I fed them as well, those higher protein or higher fat formulas, but there's something to be said for that balance right there. It seems to work for Flick. He likes it. Maybe your dog will too. Learn more at proplansport.com. And whether you're chasing chukars, blue grouse, or anything else, pointershotguns.com has your new shotgun. A little bit of everything for you, including that new FT12 semi-auto. Take a look at my video on the subject. It'll be right there at pointershotguns.com. I'll kind of give you the 50-cent tour of the gun and also talk about some of the advantages for some people of a semi-auto versus, a two-barrel, single shot, whatever it is. So look at that FT12 semi-auto and then go put one to your shoulder at a Bass Pro, Sportsman's Warehouse, Cabela's, Turner's Outdoorsman, or any number of other independent firearms retailers. Get the whole list at pointershotguns.com. Welcome back to the Upland Nation podcast. I'm Scott Linden, your host. With me on the other end from western Idaho. Yeah, way too close to the Hell's Canyon for comfort, but that's the whole idea, I guess. That's Bob McMichael. You know him as a YouTuber with some great videos. In fact, some incredibly popular chukar hunting videos, as well as a new book of the same name, Chukar Culture, and a blog of the same name. So, Bob, welcome back to the Upland Nation podcast. I promised that we would talk some, chukar hunting.
Yeah.
We've talked a little bit about what you like about it, and I got to admit, those are the kind of the same things here. Maybe because I'm such a bad shot, but it ain't about making meat for me. But it's all that other stuff, and I apologize to everybody who has to read about that stuff or listen to it when I get on a jag. But what are some of the bigger challenges you and thus most of us face when we're out there? We got to be in shape. We got to know where to start. But beyond that, what are things that if I was brand new to the game, what would you tell me are the things I should work on?
That's a great question. And I would say it's kind of a moving target. And my answer 5 years ago or even 2 years ago would probably be different than how I would answer now. What comes to mind first is, and I think this might apply to a lot of people, especially those who are kind of at the early point in the game, is positioning. I took a kid for several years, and he was a middle school aged kid. Super fit, great character, great demeanor, never complained ever. And he tagged along with me, and he had a gun and everything. but he could never get, when the dogs went on point, he could never get in position. And it's not just a matter of getting up to the dogs, it's knowing where in relation to the dog to go. And, the terrain will dictate it. The direction the dogs are pointing will dictate it. And it's just something that you learn from experience. And half the time, at least, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Even though you feel like you know what you're doing, you're at least half the time you fail. So, and then they go up, and then you try to hit them, and it's like, well, we can talk about that till we're blue in the face, and talk never improve shooting. So, at least it doesn't for me. So, the one thing, the one kind of rule of thumb that I took forever to figure out was that if you're hunting on near a slope, and chukar are almost always on a slope, I always try to get below the dog.
Yeah.
And I didn't do that for the first 10 years probably that I hunted, because I was always trying to hunt down to the dog. So I would hike just out of the truck. I would just go to the top of the ridge and always hunt down, because I thought being above chukar was important. But I hardly ever hit them. And most people who chukar hunt a lot know that the downhill, when they bust and they fly downhill, those shots are really tough, because if you have a clear shot at a bird, usually your dogs are going to be in the way of it.
Yeah.
And they get below the horizon so fast. So I just kind of like stumbled into, one time the dogs were pointing, and I had to go in below them, and the birds, I realized, when they busted, no matter which way they went, I was going to have an uphill shot that was clearer at them than if I was, pointing downhill. So that would be one thing. Probably the most important thing. As long as you're fit enough to get to your dog, and your dog will be disciplined enough to hold birds for you, I think positioning is, if you can work on that, that would be productive.
I couldn't agree more. The hardest shot we face on the sporting clays range is a dropping bird or a low bird. So why don't we eliminate that by simply getting below the bird, so it's almost a rising shot instead. Easier said than done, especially when you realize you're probably going to have to make up that altitude again. But that's another story. That's another rule too. Never get altitude. How about habitat? You in the first half we talked about shooting blue grouse on a chukar hunt and vice versa, and no one I know would ever conflate the two birds geographically or habitat, from a habitat standpoint. So if we're after one, chukars, what kind of habitat are you looking for, and what might you have learned, just like your get below them story, that we might not have thought about yet?
The habitat is pretty varied that I've found chukar in, but cover is super important. I love hunting in habitat that has a fair amount of sage and a fair amount of bitter brush. And when I find habitat like that, where the sage and the bitter brush are healthy, obviously not a sagebrush C type thing, but with volcanic rock. We see a lot of that in a lot of places in western Idaho and Hells Canyon area. The sage and the bitterbrush are kind of my favorite type of habitat. I can see my dogs slaloming through that, and the birds seem to like that kind of cover. A lot of people tend to gravitate towards water sources, either springs or water troughs, and I'm not a big fan of that. I know you see birds, but it just feels unfair to the birds. It doesn't feel fair chase at all to me to kind of like focus my hunt on a water trough. It just seems, I'm not a fan of that. When it's hot, the birds are going to be near a water source. I've seen birds like big coveys of chukar literally in the water in a small creek. The early part of the season. But as the season wears on a little bit and you get a little bit of rain, any slope that has green up, and again, it's kind of a mixed blessing because we're talking about cheatgrass or Medusa head, and they tend to get green shoots in the fall. And when that happens, then the birds kind of disperse a little bit more broadly and evenly across the landscape, and they stop concentrating around those artificial water sources. And I like that part of the season probably the best because you can hike in a lot of places and you're going to find birds more evenly dispersed across the landscape when green up starts happening. So I just, that's kind of mid-October, late October-ish around here, which is kind of the start of the Oregon season. And I've been kind of saying for years that I think Idaho starts its chukar season way too early. And I get a lot of flack for that from some people, but I like when Oregon starts their season, and we do hunt a fair amount in Oregon. So we're just constantly trying to find places that are not popular because like everyone I know likes chukar hunting because they don't see a lot of people, and so we try to replicate that. And not everyone feels that way, but that's part of you asked earlier what I loved about it, and one of the things I didn't mention was, even with what I see as a dramatic increase in popularity in the last 5 years or so, we still rarely run into someone. So we like that. Part of that is deliberate. Like there are places that we go, and if there's one vehicle parked there, we'll go somewhere else because we don't want to risk running into someone or screwing someone else up or having a dog fight on our hands or something like that. So
you're absolutely right in all those counts, and we're the same way in that regard as well. There's no disappointment like pulling in, going up off the gravel road, up the draw into the place where you can park, and finding somebody already parked there. So you have a long list, and you go to the next one. But you mentioned something about Medusa head. First off, in the first half of the podcast, you mentioned something about how's the Medusa head this year, and I'm going to tell you, my experience is it's always more. And it's not great for anything. I've had range biologists tell me nobody will eat Medusa head rye, but you mentioned that during green up, they might eat some of the shoots, these chukars.
If it's a new area for Medusa head, which is, horrible.
Yeah.
But when it comes up, and cattle will eat the green shoots.
Okay.
Also.
All right.
But when it develops that mat, there's nothing can live in that, and the cattle won't. The shoots will come up through that mat a little bit, but the cows won't get to it. The birds certainly won't, because the mat can be up to a foot thick.
Yeah, and I've been on that, and man, you trip and slip, and you're going for a toboggan ride. It is it is as slick as any ice I've ever been on.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Yeah.
So and it's spreading like crazy, as you rightly said. So and I've talked to biologists and I've read about it, and there are ways to eradicate it, but none of them are practical for where it actually grows. So
well, we'll see how that goes. It could be the next big thing. Beyond that, what other food sources do you find wild chukars actually gravitating towards, or have you discovered any interesting stuff that we might not have thought of before?
I have found crops full of grasshoppers. So I found like over 20 grasshoppers in one chukar's crop one time. I was so disgusted when I cleaned that bird, because I don't know, for some reason grasshoppers give me the willies.
Well, there was a horror movie about giant grasshoppers back when we were kids.
Yeah, and we have the Mormon crickets, which I think are related, and sometimes they seem to be really bad certain years. I don't know why, but and I have found one or two of those in a crop, which just shocked me because they're pretty big. But I don't really see. I mean, elderberries I've found in some chuck crops. In fact, I busted a covey of chukar one time down near one of the reservoirs in Hell's Canyon, and I went around the corner, and I've never seen this before or since. There were like 4 or 5 chukar in an elderberry tree, like just perched. And normally they fly and land on the ground and run and find some cover, but they were in the elderberry tree. They were actually eating the elderberry. So
that's a new one on me. I love it.
Yeah.
I've caught them in trees once or twice, but not eating anything. There was nothing to eat on the trees I found, but that's fascinating. We talk a lot about strategy, and before we talk about your book, I want a little bit of help with strategy. I'm being selfish, and I admit it. We start the day. We walk uphill. Usually that's a chukar hunt. Is the first hour is an uphill slog, but beyond that, what are some of the things that you would do if you were to tell us to be what we should do to become a better chukar hunter besides getting below the birds when you're going to shoot?
Yeah.
What do we do at the beginning of the day? Where do we start hunting? What kind of topography makes the most sense? You mentioned slopes, but sometimes it's beyond a slope.
Oh, I look at the wind, depending on the temperature and the time of year. Obviously if it's the latter part of the season where there's snow, you're gonna. I have found chukar in deep snow. Yeah, which freaked me out because I had no idea they would be there. But I just tend to focus on the side of the slope that has no snow or only a little, and I've usually found chukar. there. It's more of a crapshoot in the more temperate parts of the season. So you just kind of use your gut and look at the terrain and look at the wind. Sometimes when you go for a hunt, it's just incredibly strong wind, and kind of a general rule as well, chukars don't really like to hang out in the wind, but I have found them in the wind on the windy side of the slope. So I don't think any rule is hard and fast. I think there are, for whatever reason, always exceptions to whatever rules. But generally, they're going to be, you're going to probably have more luck finding them in a more hospitable environment, just like you or I would want to be. I like to fly fish, and my brother, I have a younger brother who's a fish biologist, and he was like out fishing everybody when he was 8 years old, and people always ask him, like, why are you so good? And he goes, well, I know how to think like a fish.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, try to think like a chukar. Where would you be if you were a chukar? Learn about what they eat. That's a good question. What do you find in their crops? Start keeping track of where you see them more often and where you see them less often. And just by process of elimination and building your own personal database in your head. I keep a log. I have a spreadsheet that I developed, and I kind of look at it from time to time and think, we should try this place. We haven't been there, and read. I have a little comment section on my log and read the notes like, oh, surprised to find birds in the wind today. Okay, well, maybe we'll start out on the windy side and then work towards that way the dogs are pointing into the wind instead of, like half the time you're on a hunt and you realize that you've spent the first half of the hunt at a disadvantage because you're working downwind.
Yeah.
Dogs are going to do much better if they're hunting into the wind. Just like, why? Why?
Well, you all of those together, if you add them up, are really about thinking more like a bird, as you've described with your brother fishing. I want to be warm. I want to be dry. The wind is a big part of that. Snow sometimes is a part of that. So if you look at certain factors and only those certain factors, you may be missing out on the one important factor that you hadn't taken into consideration.
Yeah.
You mentioned a sagebrush sea, and there's been a couple times in recent years where I found birds in a thicket that I couldn't even walk through of sagebrush.
Yeah.
But it's because the wind was screaming, and that was the only protection from the wind that they had.
Yeah, wow.
And so we, looking at the bigger picture, and bearing in mind that what a bird needs to survive, literally survive, that way of thinking is a little bit different, a little bit deeper maybe, and it just comes with experience sometimes. But everybody could stand to do a little bit more of that. Bob McMichael is the author of the book Chukar Culture, and Bob, maybe like me, when I write a book, it's to get it off my damn chest. I just want to get all that stuff out of me so I don't have to fret about it anymore. What was the impetus for you?
I had a few readers comment on posts that liked them and suggested that I write a book, and so I've been thinking about it for a number of years now. And I had some pieces that I've not published anywhere, that I wanted to get out. So the book is a combination of selected blog posts that I've edited to kind of fit better into a book environment.
Yeah.
Along with some longer pieces that have not been published.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to be able to share it in a format that was more like a book, and so that's really what it's about. I mean, it's not a how-to manual. There are about, I don't know, 4 or 5 books about chukar hunting. So I felt like what I had to say about it was a little different than most of the other books that exist, and so I just wanted to put it out there. So it's published by my small publishing company, Chukar Culture Press. So it'll be out in probably a week or 2 weeks. I'm proofing the initial copy right now.
Great. Well, I can't wait. I'm looking at some of the sample chapters in the table of contents, and again, it's for people who have some of the same interests. If you're a chukar hunter, you're going to love this book. You're going to pick up some tips, but it's about, to a large degree, I think it's about answering the question why we do this, why we're as crazy as we are to do this. If you had to think of anything in particular from the book that kind of gives us a feel for it, a taste, is there a story in there that pops into your head?
Oh, it's all over the place. I mean, I think the reason I started the blog when I had a 3-year-old dog. He had an older sister who was my first dog, and she died, and I could never hunt with her because she hunted for herself, and she would disappear. And I had to wait till she died to go hunting with what then was my 3-year-old dog, Angus. And he just, without any training or work, that dog was amazing. I mean, he'd find birds, he'd hold them, he'd retrieve them, and he just, what he did just blew me away so much that I had to start writing about it. And so I just said, well, I'll just start doing this. So most of the stories in the beginning of the book are kind of accounts of hunts that I did with Angus and thoughts that I had while hunting with him. But towards the more recent things that I've written have been more kind of, I don't know, they have more to do with things that I've been thinking about.
Reflective.
About the world. About the world and where we are and how chukar hunting fits into it. So it's more of they get more contextual and more reflective as they go on. So it's hard to pick out any one, but the one that sticks with me because of the experience was I think one I shared with you called Tooth and Claw, which is a line from Tennyson's poem, "Nature is red in tooth and claw," and didn't have to do with chukar, but it had to do with our pets and our dogs and a cat and some swallows who were trying to raise some babies near our house in Cambridge, which was our chukar home base, and it just put into perspective, the kind of struggles that these animals that we're trying to kill have to deal with just to survive. And it really kind of made me think about the differences between, I'm not unique at all in this. People have been writing and thinking about this from day one. And Robert Burns talks about the great Scottish poet finds a mouse in a haystack, and he starts reflecting on the difference between humans and animals. And it's a great poem. It's just different, the same ideas, different species, maybe.
So
I don't know.
what, I know what I'm going to take away from it just from reading the sample chapters you sent and looking at even chapter titles, for example. But what would you want people to take away at the end of this book?
That's a great question. Maybe just for themselves, try to make. I would hope that they would see that there are a lot of different kinds of connections that are available out there between, what it is you think you're doing and when you're done, like what you actually did. So how did it end up? Are you really thrilled that you were able to kill enough birds to line up on your tailgate and take a picture of 30 dead birds, or was there something better for you in that hunt?
Yeah, that's absolutely wonderful in terms of where our head should be with that stuff. And we all get there. I joke about it once in a while, but you probably know Robert Travers' Testament of a Fisherman, which is one way to look at it. The other one is the analogy I use all the time. At some point, we go beyond limits to something else, and we all get there eventually. It just takes time. Based on what I've read and now talking to you at length, you're well beyond all that. Don't need the tailgate pile. Don't need the groceries in the freezer. It's more than that, and I think anybody who looks at the book is going to see that and probably be better for themselves when they're done. And that's enough of a reason to write it right there, Bob McMichael. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, Scott. And I, to each his own. I try to live by that. And if you need to do that, I've written a lot about not liking tailgate shots and hero shots and stuff like that, but I know that a lot of people do, and I'm not trying to start something by being critical of that, but it's just it's something that it's being able to do this. You asked earlier what I liked about it, and you can be yourself and do this, and as long as you're not messing up anyone else, do what you want, do it the way you want, and have it mean what you want, and then the world would be a better place, I think, if everyone kind of lived by that. So that's all I'll say about it.
Food for thought from author, YouTuber, blogger, all around good guy, and Chukar philosopher Bob McMichael. Bob, I'm glad we could finally connect. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. We'll do it again. Maybe next time it'll be at the bottom of a hill, somewhere in Chukar country. I'll have rolled down there. You'll have made it safely, but sure appreciate your being a part of the Upland Nation podcast. Have a great season, and thanks again.
Thank you, Scott. It was a pleasure.
Oh, pleasure is all mine, Bob. It's been fun, and I hope everybody else got something out. Food, like I said, food for thought there. We've still got more to come here, including a way to feed for better performance for your dog this season. Yeah, just something to think about, if you will. After a word from Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School, these guys are hunters. So if you're looking at your shotgun at the end of the day trying to figure out what the heck's wrong with me, well, take a lesson over there. That's one way to do it. So book that through midvalleyclays.com. If you're ever in west central Oregon, you can do that. Or if you're looking to maybe replace your shotgun, because of course that is the cause of all your shooting errors. At least that's how I feel. Anyway, Dave Fiedler is the guy to talk to. Dave is the proprietor there at Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School. He knows guns and hunting, and he has a line on all those hard-to-get shotguns. Once you and he talk, you might be surprised at what you finally decide on in terms of what kind of gun you're going to get. And when you're ready, he can ship it anywhere, anytime. They specialize in sub-gauges. They've also got a massive stock of Browning hard-to-find models in all gauges. So check them out at midvalleyclays.com. And I know when I'm having trouble shooting, I go back and change the color on one of my HiViz sights. Those light pipes are so easy to swap out. And depending on the conditions, whether it's the color of the sky, the color of the light pipe, you may be better off with a yellow versus a red or whatever. The joy of it is, it's so simple. And it does work. Yeah. I wish I could show you. Well, I can. I made a video for HiViz sights that will explain it all to you. Go to HiVizSights.com. Watch the video. You'll see what I mean. Yeah, take a look. HiVizSights.com. Well, this time of year, we're concerned about our dog's performance, not just on day 1, but day 3 and day 4 or day 5 of a long hunt. And the only way to help them is to feed strategically. Now, I'm not going to go into what you're feeding, but I'm going to go into how you're feeding on this Fix It segment. It is all about bioavailability. All right, so I'm going to suggest one simple thing. When you do feed your dog, float that dog food in water. Yeah, put enough water in there so that literally the kibble floats for a couple reasons. Number one, no self-respecting hunting dog stops by frequently enough to get hydrated during the day. So you got to make up for that deficit, number one. That in itself will help his muscles get ready for work the next day. But the other thing that will help a lot is when you've got that food floating around in a liquid medium, little bits of the food, sometimes microscopic, come off. They go down his gullet and they're in the belly and in the GI tract a little bit faster and in a little bit better form to be digested and fuel that dog, if you will, faster and more efficiently. Bioavailability is what some people call it. The littler the better. And if your dog is like mine, they don't chew that food, they just swallow it. This helps a little bit. Float your dog food for hydration and for bioavailability. Hope it helps. Well, thank you, Bob McMichael, for, number one, off mic, putting up with the technical errors. Number two, for all your wisdom. Yeah, the thinking man's Chukar Hunter. If you want to learn more about his new book, go to chukarculture.com. Thank you if you participated in our online discussions. More to come in that regard. Sure enjoy those, and I hope you do too. Maybe you'll learn something about us as a community. There we go. If you left a rating or a review, I sure appreciate it. If you haven't yet, please do that for me. That's how we grow around here. And then thank you all of our sponsors who give us the resources to do this this podcast. Purina Pro Plan Sport Dog Food, Mid-Valley Glaze and Shooting School, TrulockChokes Tubes, Pointer Shotguns, Sage and Breaker Gun Care Products, Heartland Lodge, Cable Gang's Stakeout Systems, and HiViz Shooting Systems. Well, this time of year, I can say it with assurance. I hope you're having a good time. Be safe out there. Hope to see you in the field. I'm Scott Linden. Thanks for listening to the Upland Nation Podcast.